So I'm a car reviewer by trade, but I'm an economist by training. That means I have a slight understanding about what inflation is and what car companies have been trying to do with us for the past few years. They've been adding feature upon feature, tech innovations, which is all well and good. There's just one problem though. Cars these days have just gotten so gosh darn expensive. What's going on, guys? Roy Robles here from Zigwheels.Ph, and today we'll be reviewing what I believe to be one of the best variants of the Ford Everest, the Ford Everest Sport. Now, when the Ford Everest was first released a couple of years ago, it created such a stir in the car industry that it's because mostly of this front end. A lot of people find this really polarizing. Personally, I absolutely love it. You got your C-shaped headlamps right here, full LED by the way. You got LED fog lamps, but the difference with the Ford Everest Sport is that everything's been murdered out. I mean, you guys know me, I pretty much don't like chrome bits on the car, and I think Ford Philippines has been listening and watching our videos because, check this out, absolutely no chrome at all. Well, of course you got the Ford badge right there, but even the Ford badge has been blacked out. You got this huge grille which used to be chrome, now it's blacked out. The lower trim, blacked out. And you can see more of those blacked out trims right here in the side profile. You got this piano black side mirrors. You still get 227 millimeters of ground clearance on this bad boy, which means you can go through any flood right here in the cities. Just make sure that you don't go above 800 millimeters, which is its weighting depth. You got 20-inch alloy wheels, which is the same feature or the same design as you can see in the titanium variant, but again, no chrome in this one. This one is pure piano black, which I totally dig. You got a turbo badge right here. You definitely know that you're bringing a turbocharged diesel engine, and yes, you proudly show everyone that you're riding the sport variant of the Ford Everest. Now, I know you guys are probably crying out that the Ford Everest doesn't have a shark's fin antenna, but as you can see up top right there, it seems to be having a combination of both a bee sting type and a shark's fin antenna. So just screw that top off, you get your shark's fin. You guys happy now? Good. Anyway, the back end of the Ford Everest Sport shows a lot more of those differences that it has over the other variants. First of all, this plastic trim right here in the back is now blacked out. You got your Everest badge right there. It gives you this synthwave aesthetic, an 80s feel that I absolutely love, because you got these, of course, these C-shaped LED tail lamps. Now, you might be getting the Ford Everest Sport, you might be saving on a lot of money, but remember, Ford wants you to have all the features that you can get out of the least amount of money. And even though you're getting the mid-range spec Ford Everest Sport, you still get a power tailgate. That's right, a power tailgate makes an appearance right here. On the Ford Everest Sport, you won't get that in the Trend and the Limited trim. You'll find that in the Everest Sport. One thing you do lose though from the Ford Everest Titanium are the power folding rear seats. If you want to fold these rear seats down, you have to pull on this latch. Easy peasy, nice and breezy. You get all this space that you have inside. Anyway, it feels nice that even though in the mid-range spec, you still get a power tailgate, and I appreciate it. And look, you get even more Easter eggs right here on each side of the rear windshield. Overall, the exterior of the Ford Everest Sport is straightforward, and because of those blacked out trims, it adds a little bit more sportiness to the entire affair. Hey, Ford Everest Sport. Sport for sporty. All right, so stepping inside the Ford Everest Sport, the first thing that jumped right at me is how quiet it is inside. I mean, sure, we're riding a turbocharged diesel vehicle here. You would expect a lot of rattles, a lot of diesel idle noise. I mean, sure, you can still hear it, but I was expecting a lot more, and Ford did a great job with isolating yourself from that diesel engine. All right, so we got a full leather interior right here. The seats are nice and supportive. They're not too soft. I mean, that's one of the things about the Ford Everest that I do appreciate, is that it's not gonna bore you, it's not gonna lull you, but it is nice and supportive right here. It fits my chunky frame quite nicely. These two seats in the front, usually if a company would offer power seats, it would be primarily for the driver only. If it did offer power seats for the passenger, it would be a 4-way power seat configuration. But nope, Ford was able to give both the driver and the passenger forward, back, up, down, tilt back, tilt forward, and lumbar support. That's right, the passenger also gets a power lumbar support adjustment, which is absolutely great, especially for a mid-range SUV like the Ford Everest Sport. The Ford Everest Sport still has the same affectations that all the Everest that we've reviewed. You still get the octagonal shaped air vents right here. You have the media control buttons on the wrong side, right here on the left, and on the right side, you got another set of controls for you to activate and control the digital gauge cluster right there. I would appreciate it if they put all the cruise control buttons right here on the right side and just put all the media buttons right here on the left, which is okay, but again, it might take a little bit getting used to. You do have your light switch right here, as like in old Everest. And one thing that the Everest Sport does have a disadvantage, should I say disadvantage, over the titanium variant, is that you get a smaller 10-inch touchscreen infotainment system. What a world we live in where you call a 10-inch screen small, but it is what it is. But one advantage of having a smaller touchscreen infotainment system is you get manual controls right here at the bottom, which is nice and clicky. See, as you can hear that, ASMR mode. But hey, I like having these manual controls where they're supposed to be. Plus, having a smaller screen with the same resolution as a 12-inch gives you more resolution to work with. It is quite a little bit more responsive, and the image is crisper. So for the PPI patrol right there, pixel per inch patrol, you would appreciate this screen. Another feature that I appreciate about the Ford Everest is the USB port right here in the back of the rear view mirror. So it's easy for you to install any dash cam, a GoPro, an Insta360, and just charge it right there. And then if you need to take off, take it off. No need to snake any wires all around, which is kind of nice. You do have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and according to my observations, it doesn't seem to disconnect as easily as the previous Ford Everest that we reviewed. Maybe Android Auto and Apple CarPlay had an update, but even going through places where there wasn't any signal, it still doesn't disconnect from the smartphone integration system, which is nice. I like that. The steering wheel is adjustable for both reach and rake, and again, because of the aforementioned power seats, grabbing your ideal driving position is possible. However, the seats seem to be mounted in a way where even at its lowest setting, you're still high up, or maybe it's just because we're driving a Ford Everest SUV. But what it actually is that these huge windows, that's the reason why you feel like you're driving higher up. These windows create an effect where you have a better view of the outside world. If you see the windows right here, they're not parallel, or they're not exact with the front windshield, which is usually the case with some cars or SUVs. It's actually quite lower, making this possibly a great camera car. If you want to get this, probably for you guys if you're thinking about getting this one, if you want to film cars, this is a good option right here. Another affectation right here is that the door actuator is mounted to the door handle. So if you do want to just grab onto the door handle, if you are OC that way, just be careful, don't open the car. You will be opening the vehicle like that. This one here, compared to the Ford Everest Titanium 4x4, does have a manual or a mechanical shifter. Instead of a fly-by-wire system, you have a mechanical one right here. But one quirk that I've noticed is that the indicators for P, R, and D, M is not illuminated at all. Another thing that's quite annoying with the Ford Everest Sport are these lights up right here. They're pretty bright, especially at night, and it can get quite distracting. I wish they just put these LED lights and integrated it right here on the indicators, and everyone would be happy. You do have some drive mode selectors here as well as a indicator or a button for you to turn off the proximity sensors or the parking sensors here as well, and the traction control. Nice cup holders here, a place for you to put your French fries And you got a wireless charging port as well. You got a smaller receptacle here for some reason. I guess that's for smaller cups of coffee, but obviously that was for the drive selector in the 4x4 variants, where you can actually select different drive modes. That's where the dial goes. Instead, they gave you this hole that goes nowhere. Now you got a huge center console for all your stuff in it. Nice padded center armrest, which is parallel to the outboard center armrest, so that's great. Overall, being in the front cabin or being in the front cockpit of the Ford Everest Sport, if you know what a Ford Everest feels like or drives like, there's nothing absolutely different about it. It feels great. It's nice, driver-centric, and at the same time, kind of easy to clean because of this harder touch materials, but if you do get some dust or grime on it, easy to wipe. You still get the split opening glove box right here. You get your cup by the air conditioning vents to keep your cold drinks cold and your hot drinks cold. And yeah, it's nice. I appreciate this. This is a great view of the road, great visibility, huge side mirrors, which is something that you need because you don't have blind spot monitoring systems. Let's take a look at the second row seats and see what toys we have or don't have over the titanium variant. Right, so right here in the second row seats, I am sitting behind my own driving position here, and I still have a little bit of space. And Ford was able to put in some sort of divot right here at the back of the front seat, giving even more room for your legs. But it's not going to be class leading. I've definitely seen back space here that is larger than this one, but it's okay. Plus the seats are reclinable. If you wish to, chillax while you're driving, you do have a center armrest right here, which is nice, with a slide out cup holders. Got 2 map pockets and a large receptacle for a large cooler for your drinks. This is nice. Now, one thing that the Ford Everest Sport misses out from the Ford Titanium variant, the Everest Titanium variant, is an AC plug in the back. That's something that we really appreciate because we need to charge all our devices, all our cameras here. Instead, you get a USB-A and USB-C port, which is the same up front. And you also have a fan adjuster, AC vents up top, dome lights right there. Because this does not have the panoramic sunroof found in the titanium variant, you do get a little bit more headroom. Right, so the third row offers a bit more toys right here in the back. So you do have 2 power outlets, 12-volt power sockets right there, and another one behind the seat. You don't get any toys to play with right here. It doesn't seem to have as much leg room, which I am scared of. You do have AC vents, so in order to get in, slide the second row forward, then use the grab handles. There you go. Huh. All right, I've always been critical of the Ford Everest with the rear here because of how upright the rear seats are. But in a pinch, I could stay here probably for 30 minutes. And if it's more than 30 minutes, it's gonna be friendship over for me and the driver. Because this is just kind of cramped. At least you get 2 cup holders, and it's fine. I can't move my feet at all, but my legs are perfectly okay. It's fine. It's just that my head is hitting the headboard really bad. So for people probably below 5'6", you'll be fine right here. But for me and the crew, this is a no-go. All right, so driving behind the wheel of the Ford Everest Sport, you'd find out that the only thing sport about this, I mean, considerably different from the 4x2 titanium variant, is basically the trim and the seats. It says sport in it. But yeah, it still rides the same. You still have the same 2-liter single turbo engine that makes 168 horses and 405 Newton meters of torque. And yes, because of the 6-speed transmission, it does feel quite smooth. It doesn't hunt for gears as much as, let's say, the previous generation with the previous generation Ranger with a 10-speed. Remember the Wild Track? It kind of hunts for gears. And if you do need to row through your own gears, you can always do so. Hit M and you're there. And the shifters, you won't find any paddle shifters right here, or you won't be able to shift the shifter to a manual mode. There are some buttons instead right there on the shifter itself. Very Ford-like. So the Ford Everest Sport doesn't accelerate, it advances. So you don't actually feel a lot of the acceleration on the inside because how great the NVH levels is. But you can definitely see your speedometer going near that speed limit. Thankfully, the brakes on the Ford Everest and Ford Everest Sport in particular, pretty great. They're not hard to modulate. They're not like an on and off switch. Now, one thing I do appreciate about the Ford Everest and the Ford Everest Sport in particular is the suspension and the handling. Working around town, trying to park in small spaces or going through small city streets, it's light as a feather, which is exactly what you need it to be. But once you hit the highway, reaching triple-digit speeds, it stiffens up just enough for you to have this wonderful feeling, especially when you're driving. Because when you drive, you don't want to be driving a racing simulator, right? You don't want something that has just goes around like that, because for me that's dangerous. You want to be able to know where your car is at a particular space at a particular time, and the steering certainly helps. The suspension is also amazing. I have to say, of all the pickup truck based SUVs in the market today, whatever variant of Ford Everest you're getting, this is just tops for me. When we first drove the Ford Everest and they gave us a try of this one going out of town, I thought they actually gave us a smaller and more affordable version of the Ford Explorer, which is a unibody car. And I thought it was a unibody car. I thought it was a unibody crossover with a diesel engine. But nope, checking out the underneath, you see a ladder on frame construction. It still is a pickup truck based SUV based on the Ford Ranger. And I thought to myself, how in the world were they able to tune the suspension in such a way to make it feel like this? It doesn't feel like a pickup truck based SUV at all. I understand why a lot of people, including my camera guy Kent over here, bought their own Ford Everest. What I don't appreciate though is that instead of finding the automatic brake hold right here as a button, you have to dig through the menu systems like so. You have to click on that little Ford Everest icon there. Click on driver assistance and you'll find automatic brake hold. And to deactivate it, you have to close it again. But once you do activate it, it stays that way. So even when you shut the engine off, the automatic brake hold feature will still be there, and you will have to turn it on and off like so. Fuel economy in the Ford Everest Sport is great. It's not hybrid rivaling, but it's great. Around the city, from that 2-liter turbo diesel engine, you get around 8 to 9 kilometers per liter in the city. I bet you guys can get even better fuel economy if you feather the throttle just a little bit, but I wasn't trying to baby this car at all, and I still was able to get around 8 to 9 kilometers per liter in the city. And on the highway, I get 15 kilometers per liter. And for a SUV, a mid-sized diesel SUV such as this one, that's actually nice, because even though you got all this weight inside, plus you got a 6-speed automatic transmission, it doesn't have planetary gears, it doesn't have dual clutch things. It's a regular good old slush box with 6 speeds on it. Getting that type of fuel economy is decent. Safety features include, well, you got a standard set of safety features here, but you don't get advanced driver assist systems. You only get that on the top of the line titanium 4x4 variant and the very elusive Wildtrak model. But in here you do get a good set of safety features. You got multiple airbags, ABS with electronic brake force distribution. You also have an electronic parking brake, an automatic brake hold. You do get different drive modes available here, parking sensors, a rear backup camera, and yeah, again, like I said, when it comes to current technologies, car companies are more than willing to offer you all the features that they want as standard so that they can price their cars a lot higher than usual. But in the case of the Ford Everest Sport, you do get the right amount of safety features, the right amount of accessories and features that at a very reasonable price point. Pricing for the Ford Everest Sport starts at a little bit over 2.1 million pesos. So at that price point, you're gonna have to ask yourself, is the Ford Everest Sport gonna be worth the extra 100,000 pesos or so over the next in line Ford Everest, which is the Ford Everest Limited. The Ford Everest Limited can be had at a little over 2 million pesos, 2,019,000 pesos to be exact. Plus, you've got the Ford Everest Trend, the entry-level variant. You get the same engine, none of the features, I mean, same touchscreen infotainment system, but none of the power features that we earlier mentioned, as well as the power tailgate, at a little below 1.8 million. That's 1.799 thousand pesos. So, do you really want to have blacked out trims? Do you want to have the power tailgate, the power seats for that 2.1 million peso price? Well, considering that this one is 100,000 pesos cheaper than the Ford Everest Titanium 4x2, which does have a sunroof, I might add, plus power outlets, you're gonna ask yourself, is that worth 100,000 pesos? Again, these are all questions that you have to ponder before you buy a Ford Everest. But what that means for me is that Ford Philippines has created this particular price structure which is customizable enough for you and what you want out of your Ford Everest. Do you really like to get that blacked out trim and all those power features, or if you do you need it at all? If you don't need it, you can go to the limited trim, or if you don't need the extra bigger wheels and the extra amenities like the backup camera, you can go to the Trend. So if you ask me, each of the variants of the Ford Everest stands on its own really because of how far off their prices are. So if you want to go full fat, there's a Titanium Plus variant, which has this nice 4x4 and bi-turbo and a powerful engine. But if you're all for normal motoring, if you just want to have a simple SUV that looks badass, feels badass, has this great seats, great power amenities, then the Ford Everest Sport just might be your cup of Corona beer. So that's our review of the Ford Everest Sport. For me, this definitely is the black sheep of the family, but because of that lightning blue color scheme, it really just takes the cake for me. I love this variant. And for me, if I ever were to get a Ford Everest for myself, this is gonna be the one. But what do you think? Drop me a comment in the comment section down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification icon so you wouldn't miss any of our videos. This has been Roy Robles from Zigwheels.Ph, and I will see you guys next time.